Thanks everybody for being here. The first thing that we will do is have our approval of the October minutes.
Approval.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, motion carries. We'll accept those minutes. Number 2, public comments. Do we have any public here to appear before our board? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of the audit, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Philip Walker as the Finance Committee Chair. Good morning, Mr. Walker.
Well, good morning, good morning. My eyelids are open. I think I've been reading and trying to get off. Skimming all that. You mean to read the digest? I helped here. I need to read that digest version as well. Well, good morning, Madam Chair.
Good morning.
And my fellow colleagues on the board of LMATD. As pursuant to, of course, State Statute 218.391, of course, the district has to select independent audit for review purposes. Of course, the board appoints a member to the audit committee, which is, of course, you know, here I am, yours truly being the chairman of finance. And of course, we had myself as board member appointed the committee and led in the process, of course, of the selection. And we have audit committee, of course, made up of course, let me get to that sheet too. Well, no, Ms. Prasad, of course, CFO, Mr. Phillips, of course, executive director, and I believe it also the person here, just right now, right with and the recommendation, of course, is coming back from them to us and to me, of course, as a review. We had 6 particular RFPs review, and accordingly, I'm going to share with you the ranking order, what they are. Bolden and Jenkins, of course, ranking 1. Sharon Beckert, LLP, ranked number 2. Clifton Lawson Allen, LLP, ranked 3. Carabello, Furman, Loreno, and Garcia ranked 4. MSLPA 5, and Keith McCullough 6. The ranking numbers are accordingly. If you have any questions about any of this, I have it before me, and you can read, of course, what I'm sharing in more depth if you need to do so. But the recommendation again is to bring forth the recommendation of Malden and Jenkins for our base 5-year period for audit purposes. Any questions?
Any questions?
I mean, local. The only one local, of course, is Clifton Allen and Lawson Allen. Their score was 884, compared to speaking to our number 1 was 993. Their cost, of course,
Bennington.
excuse me?
Mountain and Jenkins is in Brain.
Yeah, and of course there's a current one as well. It'll be next year. Clifton Allen and Lawson are local providers. Total cost was $254,000 roughly versus $209,000. Move committee recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second.
Yeah, it's what they'll put it.
Any other discussion? We can make some up. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you for all that work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you to the staff as well for helping me and providing me needed information to help support what we just approved.
Commissioner Walker, we certainly appreciate your leadership as the chairman, and Commissioner Santiago was the newest board member. Although the Citrus Connection's been around for 41 years, we felt it was important after the merger with the county that we take a look at having a new audit firm. Not only did our federal and state grants double in size and in complexity, but we wanted to make sure that we had an audit firm that was coming in with a new set of eyes to make sure that the LMATD dollars were being spent in the district, and that the county could be assured that its dollars through the contract were being spent only in the county. And so that will continue this legacy.
That's great. And this firm also has extensive transportation.
Exactly. I should mention that as well.
Significant transit experience, and just as important, Chair, significant transit experience with independent taxing districts of our size.
And I think I did mention it will be a period of fiscal year 22 through 27 years like this.
Yes. Thank you. All right, Mr. Prasad.
Good morning. We have our financial report
we'll start with LMATD. This is the first report in the new fiscal year. It's for October 2021. Um, Consistent with the past years, normally the first quarter is very slow in financial activity, especially in terms of the revenues. As you can see, we only have received 130,000 or 13%. Our major revenues will start coming in November for ad valorem. And by the end of the first quarter, we should be able to start drawing our both FDOT and FTA revenues. Expenses are 685,000 or 69%. You're looking at the four major expense classifications: salaries and wages, fuel, materials and supplies. Salaries is 25% under the budget, favorable. Fuel is slightly over because of fuel prices. I think the fuel is running as much as $2.50 a gallon. We should hopefully see some decline since we buy in the hedge market, and parts are under budget. So overall, the finance is pretty much within the budget. However, we do have a favorable cash flow of 0.56 million, and that's funded with our reserve. As well as when you get into the county, they have advanced us there first. The entire 100% of the grants match. So there's nothing to be worried about at this point in time until I leave.
So it begins.
But I'll come back.
Yeah. Why is that lower in the salary?
It's the same issue with drivers.
Okay.
Open driver positions.
Okay, great. Any other questions?
Fare box recovery ratio continues to decline. Is that simply, that's basically a fixed amount while expenses continue to creep up?
Yes, sir. We are seeing a recovery, as you'll be able to see later on in the executive director reports, in our ridership, but it is coming back slowly.
When do we revisit those?
Fare box recovery ratio
Yeah.
during the budgeting process.
Any other questions?
I would like to just point out for the chair and the commissioners, and specifically for the mayor as well, that we have begun discussions with the CRA regarding our multi-year agreement as our CRA increment continues to go up relatively significantly every year, so that we'll be ahead of that with the budgeting process.
And if I may, briefly on the same issue, we just received the bill for the last year, and it went up 40,000 from 285 to 325.
The CRA.
The CRA payments, and that's shrinking your ad valorem revenues as well as impacting the budget.
Other questions? All right, moving on.
All right, moving on, we have the first month financial for Polk County agreement. Total revenue is 3.4 million. That's because of the change in agreement to fund the operating deficit or cash flow deficit. We received 3.1 million upfront, and that should give us some cushion and some relief with operating cash flow deficits. Again, ridership is lagging 35%, and the only other major revenues we have received is the city contributions. Overall expenses is just 54% of the budget. Labor, contract, and operating are all within the budgetary variance that are favorable.
Questions for Mr. Prasad? Okay.
And then the final financial statement is for transportation disadvantage. Again, this fund is in a different fiscal year, July 1 to June 30th. This is the fourth month of operation, and total revenues 338,000, total expenses 331,000. Revenues is over expenses by $7,000, a favorable variance. Any questions?
Questions? Okay.
And the next item is the request for approval of 5310 mobility even seniors and individuals with disabilities grant. The total amount is 105,624. There's a split of 80,000 FTA, 10,000. 10% of DOT and 10% this one. And this is an approval item.
Any questions? Do you want to explain at all, Mr. Phillips, just for the general public, of why we approve applying for these grants and what
Yes.
that looks like?
Yes, so, grant cycles are either on a 1, 3, or 5-year basis. And so this grant actually pays for Novia Santiago, who is our current travel trainer who reports to Aaron Kilgore-Kinlaw. And this person specifically works with the community to train them on how to use either the fixed route service or the Americans with Disabilities Act services. It is a grant-funded position. It is on a year-by-year basis, and it is a competitive grant. So thanks to Mr. Dunn and Steve Tribley in our Human Resources Department and Human Resources team, when we do hire someone who is on a grant basis, although we all are, if it is a competitive grant, we make sure that we have that discussion with them when the job offer is there, so they understand that they're applying for this on a year-by-year basis.
And if it is not refunded, then the position is terminated.
When the position would be
Right.
terminated, and our goal would be to first absorb that person within the organization. Commissioner Lindsay, the last example I can think of that we unfortunately lost funding and we were able to absorb individuals within the organization is when we had the multi-year contract with Geico, where we ran the public service shuttle, and then they ended up building a new facility. We were able to, with enough notice, absorb that supervisor, who was Jamie Watkins, into the supervisor of the organization and fold those drivers in. That's not always the case, but it's what we
They know that.
Correct, and we're very transparent with that.
Well, and I think my question wasn't clear. It was, why does it require board approval?
Because we must submit that information to DOT
Okay.
for Mr. Wetzel to be able to draw the grants on an annual basis.
I just think that's really important for the public at large to understand that it's not like another nonprofit or another entity where you just write grants and the leadership team signs off. That there's another layer of accountability that has to be in the process, especially with state funding.
Correct.
So sometimes people, I think, don't understand it's not a willy-nilly process. It takes us walking through it. Yes.
The other compelling reason is based on the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, single audit.
Yeah.
Part of the grant management process is you have to have the governing authority, especially when there's matching funds required.
Right.
And the auditors normally look at that. There's a separate section of the single audit in the annual audit.
Thank you. Commissioner Lindsay.
Well, that basically responds to my question that when you hire this auditor, which we did, and we made sure that they identify the services and revenues associated with land care, the services and revenue associated with the county, they're also charged with responsibility to make sure that each of these grants from the various agencies, state or federal, also are in compliance.
And I was just going to share that, but you stole my thunder.
And since we're discussing it, it is an extremely thorough process.
Right.
And I can give 2 specific examples of how thorough that process is. We've had 2 instances where we've had items that we have billed to grants that we have had to pay back.
Right.
One of those is the sticker that's on my window that looks like an etching. Was a non-eligible grant expense, so we use local funds for that. Another was a lunch was provided at a conference, and the employee went and got a sandwich. Instead of eating the conference food, we billed the sandwich to the grant, and that was a non-grant eligible expense. So then we paid that $7.75 for the sandwich out of local funds as well. So our audits are extremely thorough.
Right.
Let's make sure we use those knowledge chasers.
Yeah. Rodney, what kind of sandwich was it?
Poor Rodney, don't. Thank you for entertaining my question. I just think, in my new term as the commissioner, what I'd like to see happen is that we explain more fervently to our constituents, like how we do spend money, how things sort of happen, and it's not magic and it's not easy and it's arduous for a reason. So that's something you'll probably hear more questions with me in the next couple of years about that as well. Sorry. You'll be patient.
We'll be ready.
So we have a motion on the floor and a second, and we all say aye. Thank you. Sorry, I hijacked we have questions. All right. So that's the grant approval. Now we're moving on to state block grant funds for fiscal year 2021-22. That's also an approval item, Mr. Casal?
Yes, and the total amount is 1.57 million. And now, based on methodology, the FDOT is combining both the district portion and the county portion. And what we do internally is to allocate those funds based on the FT 5307, which is a major grant funding for the district. The district portion is 902,000 or 58%, and the district portion is 902,000 or 58%, and the county portion is 668,000 or 42%. And this is a recurring revenue.
Move approval of the resolution.
Second. A motion and a second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Prasad. Mr. Darby, you're up.
Yes. First item is a universal access service agreement between the district and New Beginnings High School. That agreement expires at the end of the year. The essential changes are to renew the agreement for an additional 2 years, from January 1, 2022 until the end of 2023. The other essential change was just to change the rate for the Summer of Safety program for an amount up to $1,500 for each of the 2 summers during the term of the agreement. The previous amount was $3,800 per summer. That, and I would invite Aaron to provide any additional information if that's necessary.
I'm happy to cover that.
Okay.
I was gonna ask about that.
So as we looked at the Summer of Safety rates, as you know, we had a transition at the school board with our superintendent. And so the $3,800 rate was negotiated when there was no Saturday service that was available for the students. So the Summer of Safety covered all the high school students and the middle school students, because the previous administration only wanted to cover Monday through Friday. So if you remember, we started with 6-day-a-week service, then we throttled back to 5-day-a-week service. We're now back to 6-day-a-week service. And then looking at what those numbers are, and effectively the Summer of Safety is only covering junior high students. Those numbers and rates were down. Is that about accurate?
Not entirely.
Okay, all right. So please clarify further.
So they were accurate 2 years ago, but then COVID hit. So the past 2 years, those numbers have been down significantly, and she never once said anything to us about what she was paying or wanted a reduction or any of those things. So we talked about it when we were negotiating her new UAP. When Tom and I talked about it, she was willing to keep her monthly rate the same for the UAP. She just rewrapped her bus. It's beautiful, by the way. But we talked about that 3,800. She's never going to be able to make up. Those kids just weren't riding. So we, for the next 2 years, have kind of throttled it back to kind of make up for the past 2 years. And then in 2 years, we can reevaluate where those numbers, because we're hoping, over the next couple of years that those numbers get back to where they were 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
And that, I guess, is my question, because if we see the increase in ridership in the next couple of summers, with, hopefully having water, really, what would the expense that be, or how would we cover that expense if it was $100? And if I heard you correctly, because we have a reduction, but if the ridership increases with those particular youth riders in summer months, how would we, how
100% of the increase of the high school students would be now covered under under the school board's agreement,
Okay.
which did not exist prior. So anyone who is 9th grade through 12th grade,
Let's get it.
that would be absorbed by the school board.
Okay.
And as you know, we've added in all of our universal access programs, Commissioner Lindsay asked us to look at it earlier in the year. All of our universal access program renewals now have not only an elevator up, Commissioner Walker, but an elevator down as well. And I believe was it Polk State that had asked for the elevator down for the first time?
That initiated it.
So as that ridership increases with the high school students, that cost will now be borne by the school district. So this would just be for
the middle school.
just for the middle school
And
students.
we think there's enough dollars allocated to do that.
100%.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Good question. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, do I have a motion?
Approval of staff recommended second.
All in favor?
Uh,
All right.
If I may insert an item that's not on the agenda relating to service agreements, just for information purposes, there was a first addendum to the service agreement between the district and Fort Meade to increase the annual payment to $25,190.76 from the previous amount of $21,000. I have the exact numbers here. That's because there was an increase, there was an additional route. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, we are now running 5 runs instead of 4 runs.
That's just for information. I didn't think that the board needed to approve that. There's an existing agreement, but since there was an additional route, just for information purposes, there's an addendum that's been created.
Yes, Commissioner Walker.
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Next item.
No, that's fine. We got some about 4B. I want to make sure that.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, that wasn't any item. I'm sorry, on the agenda. That was just for information.
Right, but there's a question I have about routing the routes that's what we, because I recall, and now we changed, what's happening with the election there, is what we were, who was then, Commissioner Barron, serving as mayor, and what would you all try to get? Even additional, I think, route system. If you're pursuing that?
So
Because I know
Short
he's
answer.
going there.
short answer is yes, but it's really their new city manager who's been a huge advocate for it. He's the one that actually got that 5th route back, or that 5th run of the bus back.
Okay.
And yes, we are working on it.
In full transparency, Aaron and I also met with the new city manager of Haines City and discussed the massive investment that the Polk County Board of County Commissioners has made in the last 6 or 7 years in adding services to the east side of the county. And that Haines City's fair share agreements need to be adjusted to reflect the investment that you all have made. And he was extremely receptive and appreciative of what the county commission had done and gave us verbal indications that the future budgeting process would be very favorable to the Citrus Connection. Now, of course, he's staff, but it was an extremely good meeting, and I think that the city management on a lot of the 27 corridor is recognizing what the county has done, how popular the ridership is, and how much it's going to be needed, not only with what's going on with traffic, but what's going on with fuel prices seem to be really driving the conversation. So prior to the economic crisis in 2008, 2010, when fuel prices were getting to I was in Chicago at the time, $5 a gallon, you really saw a significant change in the national conversation about who was using public transportation, and started to see the middle class looking for public transit options because gas prices were starting to really hit their pocketbooks. I think there are some early indications that those conversations are starting to happen again. And with the infrastructure plan that was just passed and the mass amount of money coming to public transportation in the future, this may be a time that politically we see folks understanding the importance of transit.
That with the increase in the development that's taking place in that area, Haines City, well, really, maybe related to Oakland, this is something that we have to look at, monitor carefully, because I think ridership is going to increase tremendously. If we're not already monitoring that, it's going to be good.
In the last decade, we've gone from Winter Haven being the East Polk County hub to the transfer center at the Walmart parking lot, to now Posner Park having how many connections, Mr. Dunn?
Just 5 there.
Yeah.
5 connections coming in at Posner Park. So
The 88 road is what's really scary.
Okay. Pardon me?
I'm sorry, could you keep me posted on that, on the changes that are taking place in the northeast area?
yes, absolutely.
We have a TPO meeting tomorrow, so that's one of the places that heightens our awareness to the growth in that area, but it's interesting to hear the TD support.
Yes.
Okay.
And we have a PTA board meeting right now.
Right after we go.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Darby, now we
yes.
can move on to VA funding.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, I thought it would be worthwhile to briefly advise the board as to the status of the negotiation for the VA project and provision of transit services. As you know, there's a city ordinance related to that VA clinic project, which contains transportation, transit obligations. So, enter the district, we've been negotiating with the development group, and we're almost done. The only two issues now that remain, really, it's an issue as to when the first payment is due and when the service starts. The only hitch now, and I'll work this out with staff, David and Aaron, they have inserted as of a few days ago a provision which would essentially allow the developer to determine when that service starts. We need to know when that is. In other words, as opposed to relating it to 180 days after the certificate of occupancy is issued. That's what was in the previous draft. We need to have a definite date as opposed to when the developer designates the service to start.
Right.
So that's really the only issue. So just for information, that agreement, by the way, calls for payments of $70,156.80 for 4 years when the service starts.
Annual payments, quarterly?
Annual.
Annual payments?
Yes, sir.
In advance?
Yes, well, yes, commencing as of that initial date, and then on that anniversary, the next 3 years.
What do you anticipate as far as either new assets or new drivers or new whatever?
So there's a two-phase change to deliver the service. The first phase is we use existing services. That's the orange line. We go on east and west, just north of it. It's about 28 miles down to the area. So initially, we'll run our existing services to it. When we need to hire more people or buses. Phase two is when the development gets much stronger. The hospital to the south of that is the number hospital. That will be our threshold to split the route in two, add vehicles. We had that first meeting last week.
Yes, Commissioner Walker.
So just the other financial part of that agreement is that the developer will contribute $150,000 towards the purchase of a bus. They'll either pay that or get that in the form of an impact fee credit.
Yes.
The actual stop. I guess, I don't have a question for that, because it needs to go on drive. From the point to, from that point, versus the stop there to where the heck is going to be positioned. What kind of distance is that?
Less than a quarter mile between the two locations. There's a traffic light being installed to the south of there.
Right.
We will only service it from north to south. There is no southbound travel there. In the future, there possibly be, but
So we're moving more to the south,
correct. And we'll make a left in and a right out.
and all about a quarter mile of the distance before we start, and actually push it.
Correct.
Mayor Butts.
Mr. Burton.
Oh, Mr. Barney.
Hi, good morning. And then you hit on the key points there in terms of the VA claim conflict, which is the vehicle, it's probably more compared to type vehicle. And what I'm thinking is at this point is this provision from the start of the VA claim, which would be maybe similar to 23 open. And then in the Lakeland Health, because their trip threshold beyond which they're required to buy a bus, full-size bus at $500,000 cost, and provide their bit of funding for 5 years. So there's kind of the intent is these two medical campuses involving islands, interchange, being able to develop a solid transit route between these two facilities.
Yes, and just to add, and that based on previous discussions, we are involved at the initial stage with regard to the other hospital. So we're working on that right now. Initial stage as to what the cost would be and what service needs to be provided and what we need to do. Right.
Is there a metric that we base that on?
So,
Or Aaron?
well, he has a metric and we have a metric.
Let's do Aaron. Sure.
Sure. So for us, it's
Focus on
time.
buses.
We use time. I don't care about the distance of the route or what it is, but if compromises the city's 45-minute service interval. We want money, and we're gonna put it to not compromise it. That's what we use.
And for us, it's traffic concurrency, how much can the system absorb? And so of course, we're in pretty good shape in terms of like on Highlands Road, but because the impact area of both of these projects, you get to Edgewood Drive, and West 90 parts of the road, that's where we need to have multimodal transportation options available so that we can get people away other than cars to get to these facilities. And so what we would do is we work directly with the Citrus Connection to say, okay, what is a meaningful service duration during peak periods? Then we look at the dollar amounts of that service, and then quantify that in terms of an annual payment. So the earlier ones we did with Lakeland Park Center, with Riverstone, we were $100,000 a year, because we were looking at perhaps as early for lack of health as 2025, those operating costs are going to go up, and so we were $150,000 a year dollar amount for 5 years. And then with the VA clinic, because theirs was going to be more specialized, that dollar amount was, because we're closer to the order line, that route cost is about half of what the health we open.
And now, as Mr. Dunn said, since we're involved at the beginning,
Right.
we're able to say, based on the time and distance, this is what the actual cost will be to the developer to be able to do that service. And so if $100,000 is penciled in, it costs us $93,000 to be able to do that at our current cost per revenue hour. We're actually able to tell the developer that this is what we were able to do with the VA in both the size of the vehicle and how the service was going to look and what we were able to charge them. We got so far as the VA at the beginning had felt like they wanted a curbside service and have us pull right under their canopy, and that was going to be the end of the stop, which sounds great if you're a designer or developer, but this is public transit.
Yeah, it's public transit.
And so our recommendation was you may want to build a shelter on the edge of campus, and then you can bring the vets to the door directly. And so that was what we were able to do with that. And with Orlando Health, they were able to bring earlier this week actual maps with tracing, and we were able to say, although this is what's in the developer agreement, as far as bus pull-offs and the number that we need, here's what we would actually need to be able to make that work and when it would need to be built. And so it was extremely helpful to, as Mr. Dunn said, it's all about time for us, but it's also about timing.
Yes.
When are you going to open, and when do we need to have people out there? Because there's the employees that need to get to work, but then there's also the patients and the providers, and so that timing is important.
Developer or either of these facilities eventually 24/7, even though the hours of operation.
I think the emergency.
The
Yeah,
hospital,
the hospital will be.
would be, yeah.
That's exactly what we've been hearing from the Lakeland Health.
Yeah.
Their emergency room, and they're going to have a full service hospital as well, and that's what they're planning now to move forward with as our first phase. It's I think a 200-bed hospital, now 24/7. So that's going to be something else too. As these facilities evolve, is what does that do in terms of other types of transportation options?
VA is not
That
initially.
not initially. What we've been told is more traditional, maybe longer, like 7 to 7 type operations for that.
That's what we're doing.
Something we asked for. Yes, sir. And that can change as well. But that VA clinic is going to be 133,000 square feet as well. So that's going to be about 5 times or 6 times as big as their current operation. So it will be a substantial facility.
And having the conversations early on with Orlando Health, even outside of the development agreement, one of the conversations we had was the size of the medical campus that they're building outside of the hospital means that there are going to be many paratransit drop-off and pickups. And so we were able to tell them a little bit about the dwell time, the amount of time that our vehicles spend outside and how that can facilitate traffic. And Mr. Dunn was able to pull up a best practice in Winter Haven and talk about how the Winter Haven Hospital was designed with a corridor-based system. So effectively, we're able to serve that entire medical campus from
With 2 entry points.
from 2 entry points. So one of our recommendations was that they may want to look at that type of design so that we're not clogging up.
Yeah.
Our queue is their queue. That's
That's the problem.
Yeah.
The better our line moves, the more money you make too.
Yeah.
Your line moves. For some reason, they didn't respond to it.
Yeah, when you say money, I'm sure they were.
And thank you so much for all your work and putting stuff this together.
Well, and just to reflect, I think we have a good relationship between, the city of Lakeland and Transit Authority, so that's helpful, is that they work so well together and are very informative of one another and keeping everybody in the loop, no pun intended. Yes.
That's all.
That's all on that?
Okay, that's all. Okay, next item, independent contractor agreement. With the resignation of David and anticipated issues and the transition for the new CFO, staff has requested that I prepare an independent contractor agreement, which has been reviewed by staff and David, and so it's for the consideration of the board now for David to agree to provide services as indicated in that agreement as a consultant for a period of 6 months, commencing on January 1 of 2022, and be physically available, if you will, as it says, either in person or virtually at least 2 days a week during that period of time. I'm sure David will accommodate whatever the needs are, and David would be paid $5,000 a month. He would be an independent contractor. He would not be an employee. He would not have any fringe benefits or any other benefits such as transportation, any of the other benefits employees have. So that's the proposal for consideration by the board, and any discussion.
I'm happy to announce that we have a tentative acceptance from our number one candidate, who is Kelly Bennington. She's a certified public accountant. She is currently working at the Virginia Department of Transportation as a financial accounting manager. Prior to that, she was at Virginia Tech as a senior auditor, so she has audit experience, and her previous work experience is in the railroad industry, so she does have transit experience as well. She was able to come to the district and visit with her daughter. They are interested in relocating to the Lakeland area, as her lifelong friend currently lives in Lakeland and works at OMS. And she did live in Plant City for a number of years. Don Salvage, former board member and Lakeland City Commissioner, who also owns Salvage Human Resources, showed Kelly and her daughter around for 2.5 hours and took her around Lakeland to show her the different educational opportunities and all that Lakeland and Polk County has to offer. Don gave a very favorable report of the discussion of her as a person and her background. She met with senior staff. Senior staff had a 100% positive recommendation, and then she had the opportunity to meet the senior staff. Her tentative start date would be the 24th of January. And what this contract would allow, although her skills are very superior, is given this time in transition with the holidays. And although David will say our financials are simple, the complexity of
They are for him.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Don't do that.
And a learning curve that is necessary.
Just
I did ask David if he would consider a consulting contract. I see that there are largely 3 legs of the stool that would benefit from David staying on in the consulting capacity if we need him for up to 6 months. The first is obviously the audit. The audit has started. It is going to be intense, and I don't believe it's fair to Kelly or anyone else to have her walk in and try to complete an audit that has journal entries or questions that she wasn't part of. David can assist us with that. Secondarily is the preparation of the county budget. Commissioners, as you know, your budget process is effectively a 10-month process, which has already started. So that would make Mr. Prasad available for any questions regarding the county budget. And Commissioner Santiago, as you noted, there's a lot of East County changes in the fair share agreement, so that gives that opportunity. And then finally, the preparation of the LMATD budget, if needed. So consulting for the LMATD budget as well. So we seek your approval for this.
Sorry, yes, Mayor Lenz.
I think this is brilliant, and motion to approve.
Commissioner Walker.
Again, I do agree with, concur with the actual motion. I have a question about what else? Again, did I hear it? It might have been said about Mr. Darwin, read through it again, screen through it again. Past the 6 month period, and he still will be available, hopefully, if something should happen or we need to have,
When we do this, Monday.
so we can.
Well, this is over after 6 months.
Right, no, but you, is there anything? Well, do we have anything, but should we get, like you said, extend this? But
We would, I would have, obviously I'd have those conversations with the board of directors and with David if it were needed. I do not anticipate, nor does David, that it would be needed past that, but I believe as long as, I don't want to speak for Dave, I'll let you speak for yourself, but I think as long as we work around David's cruising.
I still haven't signed off on his departure.
Yeah, you gotta get around that.
Mayor Rentz.
I think there's a practical matter. That 6 month period of time incorporates all the things that are gonna be complexities. And it's wonderful timing really that she's in the audit because she'll
Yeah.
get to see the journal entries
Right.
and all the things that are taking place in the course of this. And so the timing of her entry is excellent as well. Beyond 6 months, an occasional lunch, that David gets to eat at and.
Just make sure you charge at the right account.
Yeah. Charge is the right grant.
Hard, not.
I hope you appreciate what I
You
asked,
know,
because it's just,
right.
something could happen.
But if we had
Any questions?
the difficulties, I would certainly think there would be ability to extend this for some
Commissioner Rentz.
project. Yes?
Thank you all very much, and just to give you some assurance, I'm retiring in Riverview, Florida, Hillsborough County. And I'll be available,
There's not even a cruise port.
yes, you're in one in Tampa.
Riverview.
8 miles. But
Yeah.
I'll always be available to help out Tam and his staff, and,
Yes, I got you.
I will be around.
Right. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. I still haven't approved it.
Okay, thank you. Next item, Executive Director Annual Review. I'll just read to you the provision of the employment agreement relating to salary. Tom's salary is set forth at an amount initially, and then Tom's salary for each year of any additional 2-year term shall be set annually by the board based on annual performance evaluations by the board. So these haven't been passed out yet. Okay, so we have completed the process that we have gone through in the last several years, which is sending out the evaluation forms to all of you with 8 categories for you to rate Tom 1 to 5, 5 being the highest score, and also to provide additional comments, which are all listed, not by name. The scores are categorized by name, but then all the comments are listed in each of the categories are all listed, the written comments that you all made in the categories. Further, in the provision in the agreement, in addition to the amount of any annual salary increase for all district employees, the district may increase employees' salary up to 1% each year based on employee evaluations.
Do you have any questions or comments from the board?
I'm just looking at the scoring. Asset management. There's 2 floors. And because of that, my question was going to be, what are some of the recommendations from those who ranked floors on improving asset management? I don't see it's in the
So just, and I expressed this to Tom, and I know my fellow commissioners saw this in my other, I grade a lot harder. So for me, there's not a glaring. I think we manage the assets really, really well. I'm trying to get back in front of my comments on that. But I've also expressed to Tom, and I've said this publicly with our city manager, I was raised by Marine, So he didn't know why I had an eraser on my pencil for math problems when I was 6 years old. You shouldn't make mistakes in his mind. So that maybe childhood trauma coming through. And kind of managing people, but I think Tom does an excellent job in everything he does. So for me, these scores are high. My metric is if you're at a 3, you're meeting, and so the step up is kind of a little more difficult, and that's why I grade a little bit more.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, the average rating is a 4.5,
Which is still high.
very, very high, so, so I think it's there's no need to be concerned there.
Commissioner Carly has taken my role as being the most critical grader and asked. And when the question is exceeds expectations, and I said we didn't set very high expectations.
Right.
So, I don't have any dissatisfaction, it's just a very critical observation, critical statement.
Well, there was a parallel there that I saw, so that's really why I was thinking my missings.
We definitely have increased our focus and will continue to focus on asset management in the 2 areas I believe that we've shown the greatest improvement and needed to. Were the conditions of the park and ride lot, specifically Dowfields. Did get out of control a couple of times, so we've got that under control. And under Mr. Steinmiller's leadership, we are working diligently to have increased vehicle availability every day and to decrease the downtime of our vehicles. But that has been a challenge this last year, and I know it's been a frustration for Mr. Dunn and for Marcia Roberson as well, with what's available every morning. And so that is definitely an area that the board can hold myself and staff accountable. And again, under Jay's leadership, it's been improving, but it's definitely an area that we can continue to improve on.
Sorry. Yes, and yes.
So the only criticism I hear from riders, okay, with any frequency, is condition of the buses in the mornings not being clean, not being sanitized, not acting, and that it looks like somebody barely went through it and those things. And so, having heard that several times, just as an encouragement, that's less asset dollars at management with the customer service conditions of those. Any comments on that? We've been short-staffed on cleaning.
I don't believe we've been short-staffed on our cleaning.
I think it's more of observation. Buses are cleaned every night when they pull in. So I guess when operators get to determine if the customer doesn't actually see them cleaning, we need to handle it. So it's more observational, I guess.
Commissioner Walker?
No, I was, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just going to share that as input as alluded to. I walk up in North Lakeland quite a bit, and I've seen it on several occasions where I've seen it. I think I've seen the change. Because I know the transit stops and places where they are, how filthy it can be. And, when I walk by, I've got to go walk by them. So I have seen them change. I've seen them change where staff has come in and clean, and I hope I've said it even a number of our meetings where I appreciate it. Staff coming by and clean some of these places the way they are. And because of some of our transient situations that we have in our community, and I'm going to talk about where I walk, and I walk about 5 miles. But I've seen, where you would think how places would be as almost as filthy as they can be, check clean, right? It makes me like, wow, and I can appreciate that. So I know we've had a conversation about that situation, but it also going back to what Mr. Mayor said about the buses. I think I need more comments about how stops are versus the buses. But anyway, I've seen the change. And I should tell staff again, I appreciate that. It's trying to be much better.
Commissioner Santiago?
Two things. First, as a newcomer, right? Probably not a newcomer anymore.
Not anymore.
Anyway, the newest one on the board, your leadership makes me really understand this, making sure, being sensitive to the fact that a lot of this information is really and confusing at times. So thank you for that information. Remember too, at one time in the past, when you said that 5 lines that needed the cost, and I did call someone about the condition of the cost the next day. It was pretty clear. So I can say as far as the management of the asset report, whoever it is really keeps an eye on that area because that's a lot of people, a lot of traffic in that area. The third thing is, do you take a self-assessment? Do you assess yourself as far as is?
Beyond
Yeah,
myself.
beyond.
Beyond the crippling
Beyond what
self-doubt.
we can use. I would like to see how you assess yourself in that. Do you-
I would-
do you have any
I do not,
idea?
but I would be happy to do that. I'm very lucky to have Mr. Sims that I've worked with for 10 years. So every once in a while, Paul will walk into my office and
Assess.
let me know what needs to be taken care of and assess how I'm doing. So
I think there's a lot of value.
I appreciate that. But yes,
Yeah.
I
I like that. Ben, if we could talk about that or
Yes.
maybe formulate something that'd be helpful.
absolutely.
Commissioner Lindsay.
We're in better financial shape than
Yes,
ever.
yes.
And I think probably less reliance on the rehab and refurbishing of some of the older fleet. But that's still an important component, but not as important as it used to be. With Mr. Cheney's retirement, do you see a transition of lesser of that or maintaining the same level? Or what's the, what do you expect?
Yeah, so we have 6 Eldorados that should be arriving by the end of the year. So Commissioner Lindsay, yes, and again, this is a team effort. With David retiring, this will be the first senior staff transition. Steve's our newest employee, 5 years you've been here. So this will be our first senior staff transition for 5 years. So it was truly a group effort. And a large portion of the financial stability of the district is thanks to David. And I'm really going to miss him. We'll talk about that more later. But I think that under Jay's leadership and what we did with the 0.68 million for vehicle replacement, the leasing program that David put into place is now starting to bear fruit. The largest challenge, Commissioner Lindsay and board members, as you know, is that even when these develop, and this is something that Chuck tells the developers, if you say you need a bus 2 years from now, we need to order it today.
Right.
So certainly the economic downturn in COVID is nothing that anyone wanted. One of the largest beneficiaries of the relief plan is public transit. When we went to the Florida Public Transportation Association, both the American Public Transportation Association Executive Director and the Community Transportation Association of American Executive Director said they have never seen this large of an investment in public transportation in the history of the United States and what is coming. So Commissioner Lindsay, I think there will be less reliance on it. That being said, I don't see, and I don't want to speak for you, Jay, but I don't see a straying completely away from Link's rehab program as long as they continue, as long as they continue to retire buses that are in such good condition.
Yeah.
And we have Jay and his team able to do the rehab, it's still a good steward of taxpayer dollars. But no, it's not, it was a crutch that if we didn't have at that point, the district would be in a much different position. I don't know how we would not have outsourced significant portions to a for-profit carrier that could provide the capital and not, other than what we're doing on the east side of the county with transitions.
Somewhat on that subject, the county was recently recognized by the National Fleet Directors Association, some such trade organization. Working with local Travis Tech and another school about internships for the mechanics and tradesmen. And if we're not doing that, we need to consider.
Partner.
We'll have Jay follow up on this.
Well, I just want to say, before I turn back over to Mr. Darby, of all, Tom and I worked through Bolt Vision together on transit and infrastructure, and he has been a consummate professional. And I think that the district is in the best shape it's ever been because of his leadership. So I appreciate all he does. His communication, at least with me as chair, and even before I was chair as a board member, was excellent and always ahead of the curve as much as humanly possible. I really appreciate that, but I think you serve our community and our county very, very well, and we're really lucky to have you and fortunate that you somehow found your way to Polk County and brought some great, ideas along with you and structural pieces, and then assembling the team that you've assembled, I think is kudos to you, because you've assembled a really remarkable team. And I know you always give credit where credit is due, which we appreciate too as a leader. I think we all see your humility in recognizing their strengths. But if you weren't strong, you wouldn't pick the right people to be here. So I think you should be commended for that. And now we need to move to an approval item on this.
Just one more point. Historically, the effective date of the employment agreement is August the 29th, so that would be the annual anniversary. Historically, any increase has been retroactive back to that date. So
Yes.
Just for information, so.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, well, one last thing. I don't do all fives unless I think someone's extraordinary.
What do you want to do?
I mean that.
Yeah.
So now that our arms are long enough to pat ourselves on the back,
Yes.
I move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
No, wait, okay, so approval
Yeah, what are we clarifying?
well,
Well, what employment agreement and the raise and the retroactive effective date.
okay, so the raise other employees got plus the 1%.
Yes.
Yes.
Tom, does that,
May I ask,
Yes.
last year you made my raise portable to other employees. May I ask the same this year? So that I can dole out that percentage as I see fit to other employees if they're
No.
rewarded?
No.
No,
You need to
It's
take
for
it.
you.
It's for you.
We did that last year.
It's for you.
okay,
That motion clear?
I think so, yeah, as long as they
Is there-
understand,
is
as
there-
long as
While-
okay.
While the issue's open, is there any reason we shouldn't change that effective date to January and get it back on the regular cycle? Or is that?
Is that because you got hired?
Yeah, I think so.
That was my higher date.
That's
Right.
what I figured.
It's not a big deal. You know what we're voting on now?
Yes.
Would you consider putting it on a fiscal date as well? I mean, that's typical in our raises are, for all employees are impacted, something that is 27.
Yeah.
Make it retroactive and then change the
You
effective
change it
date
from
to the fiscal year.
Yeah, October 1.
Yeah.
Okay,
The motion.
okay. Got
Do you have a motion and a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we'll move to fiscal. You good with that?
Thank you for keeping me. Yes. Appreciate it.
Oh,
Good point.
I mean, David's not leaving yet either, so I don't know what y'all are talking
In
about.
unrelated news,
She has not given.
Marshall got accepted to Florida Southern College.
Come on. Yay. Okay. All right, Executive Director report.
Yes, so we will have time to say goodbye to David as the agreement was approved. But I would just like to say, the district would not be in the financial position it is if it weren't for David Prasad. David joined the district 7 years ago. I didn't think he'd last a year, and he lasted 7. So David, I just can't thank you enough for all that you've done. You've been a pleasure to work with. There are days also where I wanted to pull my hair out, but you are one of the finest people I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And thank you for all that you did for the district. Just an interesting story to share with everybody about who David is. And I know you've learned about him over the last 7 years, but this is a story that most people don't know. David quit after the first day.
Well, who was the compelling talent?
So took a look at things and said, you know what, this isn't for me. And David and I had a great heart-to-heart and talked about what did he need to be able to succeed within this. And the answer was a quality controller and a lieutenant that he could hire and he could trust. And so we created that position. And so I just, from that first day to have someone say, look, I can't be successful unless I have these very specific resources, to me just showed the kind of person that he was. And that he then came back that second day, hired that position. And although that position is transferred over, that we have Rhonda in that position today just shows how critical his understanding of finance and organizations was that he needed to have that in order to not only for him to be successful, but for the entire department to be successful. So thank you for everything, David. And we'll have his formal retirement and the painting and all that good stuff in the near future. In addition to the audit, one of the other things I failed to mention, and one of the reasons we'll need David around, is it is triennial review time. So the federal government will be coming in for its triennial review. Typically, they review us, Lynx, and Hart all at the same time. We do not anticipate any issues, but this will be the first triennial review that looks completely at a merged Lakeland area mass transportation district. So even though the county merged with us 5 years ago, as you may remember, Commissioner Lindsay, Commissioner Santiago, you still had a triennial review, even though you didn't have transit a few years ago. So we don't anticipate any major issues with that. I'd like to, speaking of the federal government, I'd like to thank Bill Canerium. Bill and the safety department reached out to the Federal Transit Administration and described to them the service of the squeeze and how difficult it was going to be for us to enforce the federal mask mandate. And they have said that they are considering that a open air service. And so riders are not required to wear masks, which I believe it would have been a major impediment, unfortunately, to people riding the squeeze. So Bill, thank you for reaching out. I honestly didn't think that they would make an exception. So thank you for checking on that. Also, as it was a little bit colder, and just for the staff that are watching, when we kicked the heaters on for the first time, there's that fun smell that comes with the heat tape, which then led to rumors that there was black mold in the buildings as particle matter came out of the heaters. And so I'm happy to announce, and I've sent to senior staff, we have the air quality tested at all of the Lakeland locations, the Lakeland terminal and the Winter Haven terminal, and all of the air quality and mold came back within normal parameters. So everybody is healthy and safe going into the holidays.
Just having grown up in a heating and air conditioning family with my father's job, the reason this happens, and I have to do this lots of times, is the elements that flow across that are literally electrical grid that light up are full of the lint from all winter long, and for in our case, almost all year long. You turn it on and they literally burn off. Mm-hmm. And so it's very normal. The house isn't burning down and that kind of thing. It's just you recognize the first time that grid is lit up with all that lint on it, it'd be no different than if you were lighting, lint on your countertop. It'd be the same smell.
Yes, sir, Mr. Ray. Perception is reality. So the moment that there was black stuff on people's desks, it was immediately mold. The last time this occurred was 3 or 4 years ago. And again, we had the carpets cleaned, put down the mats that protect the chairs a little too early. Moisture started to be there. Some people got some coughs and some of the air quality tested. And then finally, a squeeze update. So we do have a very brief squeeze update. Do we have some slides to show? So we launched the squeeze, and I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Dunn in a moment. But I am happy to announce that the day and evening service has started. The day service, to be quite honest with all of you, is a bit lackluster. And so we did anticipate that may be an issue. So the initial service was 11 to 1. And I have to say that I went for my first squeeze ride, got out of the office a little late and missed my squeeze back because I walked out at 1:05. And in discussing with Mr. Dunn and the team and what they had seen over weeks and weeks, they recognized that the joinery and other eateries, around 11:15, people were coming in 11:25, reserving seats, but it really didn't fill up till around 11:30, 11:45. And so one of the adjustments that we made was now the squeeze operates starting this Monday from 11:30 to 1:30. Perfect. So that people are able to get back. That has not borne fruit in increased ridership yet, but we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing with that. The evening service, I know Mr. Dunn will never be happy, only satisfied, but exceeded my expectations on the first Friday and Saturday night, doing over 50 rides on Friday night and over 30 rides on Saturday night. And so Mr. Dunn's going to talk a little bit about some of the changes that we want to make to the evening squeeze to make that ridership even higher.
Okay, thank you, everyone. And it was a very successful weekend, but it's because, and I'm very happy because no one got hurt. There was no incidents, and that's why it was good. As far as failures go, we've had some failures out there, and that's good. We need failures. We can have failures and still have a successful pilot. In fact, one is dependent upon the other. But interestingly, Friday night was First Friday. We did 54 trips, I believe, and it was 26 the next night. We learned a lot in the first night. Being First Friday, we detoured the route. So if I can draw your attention to the screen on the left here, this is the originally designed route. Lots of stops, goes up real high in the sector of downtown, lots of stops inside. It's not what we started with because it was First Friday. We had this detour. It's real simply how this works. There's 3 basic locations you're coming from to go downtown. The joinery, the college area or the neighborhoods, and the hotels. There's only one stop location in here. It's 3 little stops, but it's one, it just depends on what direction you're coming from. We realized very quickly that that works really good. And it worked really good because it got rid of the confusion people have. There's a different level of apprehension for these riders. When we did reroute, there was some apprehension because it's a new route, but they're already riders. This is a different kind of apprehension for people to ride. Where do I go? How do I get there? Where do I get back? This 3-stop method in the center of town worked really, really well because we were able to greet people when they got downtown. Okay, great. Welcome to our city because they came from the RP Funding Center. Or welcome to downtown because we saw they came from the neighborhoods. When you go to leave, you want to get on that stop right there out of here. That was very self-correcting, and we didn't really realize how much so until the end of the first night. So if you fast forward to the next night, we tried to replicate this same methodology the best we could right here in this sector of downtown. It was very difficult. In fact, we had half the ridership, and we should have had 3 times the ridership Saturday night. Friday night was busy. For those of you who know what goes on in Lakeland, which I know you all do. First Friday was busy, but it had nothing on that Winterfest, I believe it's called.
Snowfest.
Out of control busy.
Yeah.
Should have tripled the numbers.
Yeah.
Did not, could not because of the method. And what we realized was happening is people were riding, and I'll just give a couple examples to explain. Let's say someone gets on downtown, wants to go to Florida Southern College area. Well, they get on downtown, they ride past the joinery and all this to go to Florida Southern College because they didn't know what stop to get on. We weren't able to catch them and gather them up and get them to the most direct way to do that. So people along the route that wanted to ride could not ride.
Yeah.
And so kind of by default, building the detour for the night before really helped us stumble upon a better method. And so we have a couple of changes. I'm going to point out where the areas are really problematic before I change screens, James. In here with a lot of stops downtown, can't control it. People step on one another's transit. And then out here, when people want to come back to the peripherals of the route and there's people waiting, people riding, can't get on. We did clean it up the best we can. We had a quick reactionary vehicle on station on Saturday night. That would have been at least 16 rides higher that we know of. And the 26 that we got on Saturday night, 8 of them we only got because we took a third vehicle because we did miss people. So we're very confident about what you're about to see on the next slide, please, James. It's a very similar route. It's not a big change, and we don't anticipate doing this week to week either. Okay, so what we've done is we've basically taken the top off of where everybody's getting off. Now, one of the reasons for that is also because those businesses all close at 9 o'clock. So we were struggling to keep the route on time for 3 hours just to send a car into a dead zone of the city. Totally pointless. People want to get off downtown and go do their thing, and they want to know where to come back. This little super stop, we're calling it, makes that really, really easy. Welcome to downtown or welcome to Lakeland, whatever it is. When you go to leave, please get on that stop right there. It'll take you back to where you want to go. So that helped the downtown part. The next part, it does not go all along the north side of the lake any longer. And it does that because, again, I'll give an example, explain as easy as I can. Let's say people are at the joinery that want to go back to the college or to the neighborhood. Now, because we come the same direction, we can drop them at this stop before we loop around and grab the people who are waiting to catch the bus right there. So we made that change down here. We made the change downtown, and that's really all the changes that we see for now. We feel very confident that running with this method for an extended duration of time is going to give us the best chance of success.
I like the super stop.
Yeah.
I think that's really smart.
We like it
Where
too.
is that? Where is that?
Kentucky.
Great question. This is the intersection of Main Street and Kentucky. So right there by the terrace, Harry's. The other reason we like it is because they're very dangerous. When you're operating on one intersection instead of three,
Yeah.
you're minimizing your risk, and you got somebody there to control it the best that they can. And the other thing we like about this is when we do have a detour, which we're going to have every third service night because of First Friday, this jogs down to Lemon Street. Where am I at? That is Lemon Street. You're showing me the detour, James. We're looking at the detour right now.
We are looking at the detour.
On a regular night, it's on Main. Where you at, James?
Right.
Okay, right here. Main and Kentucky on a regular night. When we have a detour, the only change is we jog down one block. So all of our residents who live here all the time, and these people at the hotels aren't going to care. They just need it to be simple. And it will be, because when they get off downtown, there'll be 3 signs. They're all in the same intersection. One sign says to the joinery. The other sign says to the RP Funding Center, and the other sign says Florida Southern College. So you know where to go, self-corrected. An added benefit to this is, should we get to the point where ridership becomes a problem, keeping up, Paul and I were talking about, our fear is we're going to show up somewhere one day and there's going to be 30 people waiting. What do we do? We hope we have that problem. But if we do, the super stop with 3 stops allows us to create a queue. So people are riding on it, want to go to the joinery, they come downtown. I got people waiting to go to the joinery. I'm going to ask you guys to exit the car. Now, they don't have to, but we now have the ability to start a queue so we can maximize our capacity.
Question?
And if there's no staff there, changing the signs from boarding here to joinery this way, RP Funding Center this way, Florida Southern this way, means they understand where to stand. Which right now, everything just says boarding.
I can tell you from being out there all weekend, because it's where I live now, is downtown Lakeland every weekend. It's a huge deal to have that. It alleviates a lot of anxiety for people. And you'd be surprised how much anxiety people have and these are people who are affluent. Most of the ridership, by the way, is coming from the neighborhoods right now. The hotels have not fully,
That's great.
the interest is there, but they just haven't fully embraced it yet. It's coming.
I was on the radio with Julie last night on 97 Country for her weekly radio show. And she informed me that both hotels have purchased the initial $250 in wooden nickels. She was going there this morning to drop it off. And we ordered a couple of dozen or a dozen lucite frames. And those will be delivered with the new maps over to both of the hotels. They're going to put, at least one of the hotels, the new one, is going to put them at the tables that are in the lobby. And then at each level of the hotel, there's the house phone with the half crescent table. They're going to put that information there as well.
Awesome. Commissioner Santiago.
Yeah, just remind me, how many screens vehicles do we have?
We operate 2 at a time. We own 3, but for maintenance cycle.
So what's the time frame of the cycles?
How
often do they get?
Good question. It's 25 minutes from one cart to get to this side to the other. That's in service with passengers. So we keep it on a 30-minute, which gives 15-minute interval throughout it.
I really like coming around the south part after riding it. Coming around the south of Lake Warren. I mean, it's fun to go the long way, but that just seems, I don't know why we didn't think, I don't know why.
It's actually the exact amount of time, if you were curious.
Yeah.
A lot of stuff about our city is unique.
But it feels shorter.
It does feel shorter, and that makes a big difference
Yeah,
for the rider
it's
experience.
perception.
And the apartment complex there is Florida Southern students, is that correct?
Exactly. Well, this one's private residence.
They're
It's like a white colored one, and then the brick one is Florida Southern. Owns that one. And again, we want to drop them off so we can pick up more, not wait till we go around. We tried the best we could to put as many stops in for all the businesses and all the people. And I think the commissioner can attest that each time I've seen you, I've given you a new updated version. So we started with everybody gets what they want, and that's just
only a little bit.
well. And there's an important thing there. It's not an exercise of futility. It's an exercise in we're trying as much as we can to give everybody what they want, but we're not just telling you no. We'll try it.
There are 2 really exciting things for the board to hear about this. One is we're bringing in people who are not public transit riders, which is a behavioral shift that we want to see happen in incremental stages. And I think that's something that's really, really important to this discussion and needed, because then they won't yell at us about traffic. They'll say, get on the squeeze, get on the bus. And then the second piece is our drivers are ambassadors, and they are doing a great job at the training that has happened that I've seen, and then we've talked about too, of they're like, where you, instead of getting on and not having that, it's, hey, how are you? It's, where would you like to go? Because then the driver is doing education the whole time to these new public transit riders who aren't typically in transit in Lakeland. Now they'll go to Washington and New York and ride transit all day long and walk 40 miles a day. But in Lakeland, for some reason, we can't do that, or in Polk County. So I think that you guys should be commended on that driver education piece, because they really are ambassadors for the community at large.
Thank you for saying that. They certainly have worked very hard.
Yeah.
For the board's peace of mind, they delivered over 207, what I call manufactured trips. So before we did day one, all 4 operators have delivered 274, I believe the count was, fake trips. And that's how we train them. We had them run the operation as if it was underway.
Right.
Myself and some other staff members showed up along the route at different points, showed them fare. Some of that fare was valid, some of it wasn't. We were testing them. And we had a story. Hi, how are you? I want to go to Fresco's, right? And then just until they learned how to do it. So thank you for the commendation, and all credit belongs to the operators. for sure.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
question, so I'm coming from Winter Haven, I want to go in downtown. I don't want to take my car downtown because of parking situation. Where would I go to take the screen so I can enjoy the downtown?
It's a great question. If it's First Friday, I'm going to tell you to go down here. If it's a First Friday, anywhere around the Lake Hollingsworth area, because that parking is available. And most of the people going to First Friday are parking down there, which is why.
Not like
None of
Hollingsworth.
us are resident.
Lake
Did I say
Mirror.
Hollingsworth? Lake
Yeah.
Mirror. I'm sorry, Lake Mirror.
She'll be walking.
Where is this?
Just call me Martha.
I
I'll
would tell you. Plus, you can get there through Main Street. So if you were a passenger telling me that, I would advise you to come through Main Street from Winter Haven, to park along the promenade there. It's very beautiful. We showcase our city, and hop on your nearest stop, either the Port Porker, or if it's a First Friday over here at Hollis
I'm going
Garden.
to try that.
Great. We look forward to seeing you out there.
Next time you check it on.
Well, no, but I will.
Well, and I also want to thank Commissioner Lindsay for stepping in and doing the kickoff, and talking to the media, and always being such a great representative of us. So thank you for stepping in and doing that. Appreciate it. Mr. Darby?
Yes, back on the executive director employment agreement, I just wanted to clarify.
You're getting me nervous now,
No, it goes your way. It goes your way. Just so you all remember, the term of the agreement was for an initial 1-year term, but there are automatic renewals for 2 additional 2-year terms. So it's really a 5-year contract. So it's automatically renewed. All you were considering today was the annual adjustment to the salary based on a performance evaluation. And I apologize on that. We're talking about 1 month, but the increase would go back to August 29 for this year, but we'll modify the contract to make it now October 1, which essentially extends his term another month.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it.
Do we have any other questions on this piece for Mr. Dunn or any other stuff?
Great work and great flexibility.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks for doing that. All right, Mr. Phillips,
I'll just
your
finish
summary.
my report with the fact that I just got back from England, Scotland, and I did get the opportunity to see the Lakeland Swans' distant cousins.
Oh, wow.
My
Those were
understanding,
such great.
my understanding is that the Lakeland Swans, the initial pair,
Yes.
were from the Queen, and so we were able to visit Windsor. And I will say, I don't know that it's allowed within the city of Lakeland, but they have a cottage industry in a healthy food that you can feed the swans.
Oh,
And they charge £1 a bag. So if there's some enterprising Lakelander out there who can figure out how it's safe to feed the swans that, it's a pretty bustling industry.
it's all catapult.
That's the end of my report.
Great. Great. That's awesome. Do we have any other business?
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. That's true. We won't see each other again.
Boxes.
I did want to say that, really quick. You want to talk about these? Yeah. So speaking of catapults, Citrus Connection worked with Catapult to order these for all of our staff. And they're holiday presents, and they're done by local entrepreneurs here in Lakeland. And it's just a great partnership between us, and we pay for
Holy
it.
cow.
So they weren't for Can
we open it? Can we open it?
You can take a look. Yes, you can't
Yeah,
keep
you
it.
can, you can't.
No, no,
They're not for us.
I almost was in
Take it
there.
back. Wondering.
So so this is,
They're
well, how many did we order?
All right.
we ordered exactly enough for staff.
Okay. Yes, so I'd like to thank James. Every year, we set aside a modest budget for the holidays as a thank you and appreciation for the staff. And James received the email from the LEDC and Catapult that they were undergoing this initiative of 100% of the goodies that you see in the box are from the Catapult community. And so, again, thank you, James. So
Yeah.
we're a tax-funded organization, and we felt it was only appropriate, especially with COVID, to put those dollars back into our local community. So congratulations to Mr. Scruggs and his organization, because it was really well done. And we
Absolutely.
did it early enough that the box design was able to be done.
I don't think they'll cost you. Thank
Very
you.
nice.
You don't get to keep it.
And thank you to all the staff. I'm hoping, wishing them have a great holiday. Yeah, it's not yours. It's a gift band.
And you can still
Order 5 extras.
I will.
Grasping
You got shirts. You got shirts.
corruption.
Merry Christmas, you got shirts.
Seeing no further business, I'll call for adjournment at 9:51.
No, we can't have it.